Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Ain't gonna hurt.
Is my boomstick!
Game over, man. Game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Xander Luketic. And today we're talking 1992's Candyman. We assume if you're listening to this episode, you have already seen the movie. See, I did it that way, without a prompt.
Oh, no.
What happened?
Oh, we're not watching the 2022 Candyman?
I haven't seen the 2022 Candyman.
Uh-oh.
I guarantee you haven't either.
No.
Yeah. Have you seen this? Have you seen the sequel? Or the third one?
Come on, man.
I know. Sorry, just giving you shit.
But I figure, much like I give you a hard time about saying your line, I can't not continue my terrible joke of always thinking that I did the remake of a movie when I have that opportunity. It wouldn't be me.
You got to keep the pattern going. I get that. Mm-hmm. The big question here is, this is episode 150 for us.
That's right.
This is a big one. And that's why I picked this movie, because I know it had such an intense influence on you as a child, for which, after watching it again so many years later, I don't fully understand. But please tell everyone your history with the film.
You're really going to make me get into this, aren't you?
You don't have to if you don't want to. I fully understand.
It's a little embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. Just put it out there, man.
Okay. I guess in my defense, I was 9 years old when I saw this movie. And it was one that my dad rented, because that seems to be the pattern for every movie I saw when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And this movie terrified me. And when I say terrified, I mean like child trauma scarred me. For years after I watched this movie, I was so afraid to go into the bathroom and look in the mirror that when I would go and wash my hands after using the facilities, I would stare daggers into the sink. I refused to even make eye contact with my reflection in the mirror, ignoring the fact that you have to say the name 5 times for it even to be a factor. But that's how scared I was of this thing.
It fucked you up that bad?
Yeah.
Crazy.
If I went to wash up before dinner, for example, so the bathroom door was open rather than after using the washroom, I could look in the mirror, almost as if my child brain thought, well, there's an escape there because the door is open. But that's how afraid I was of this movie. And I actually lost track of when it was that I stopped being afraid of it. Obviously, it happened at some point, but it was a very long time coming, to the point where I was afraid to even consider revisiting this movie. Seeing Tony Todd, as amazing as he is in other roles, would still give me the heebie-jeebies, even though he is pretty intimidating looking dude anyway.
Oh my God, yes.
So when you said this, I was genuinely terrified. To the point that after you told me this, I was taking a shower one night relatively late into the day, because things with the day just lost track of time, got to the gym really late. Mm-hmm. And I had an irrational fear that behind my shower curtain was going to be Helen from the end of the movie waiting to kill me.
Helen, of all people.
Yeah, for the longest time, I thought it was Mary, because I was pretty confident that this Helen character is playing up the Bloody Mary mythos, I guess, whatever you would call it.
Which it pretty much is.
Yeah, so in my mind, I completely forgot that her name was Helen and not Mary. But yep, that's where I was at, and loved telling that story.
No, it's a very honest story. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm still glad I made you watch it, because, come on.
This irrational fear that I had in the shower, which I recognize might have even just been that it was late, I was exhausted from chasing a 4-year-old around all day, and my brain was probably not at its peak functioning, was before I watched the movie. That was just the result of thinking about watching the movie.
Yes. And I'm gonna say something here. After I said that this is the movie we were going to cover for 150, I was trying to think about why something like this would scare you as much as it did. And I tried to find what really scared me as much, or try and think of something that caused as much of an emotional trauma. And mine is much more ridiculous than Candyman.
Okay.
It's an episode of the Ghostbusters cartoon with the Boogeyman. The image of the Boogeyman terrified me. Blue skin, pointy ears, giant nose, like a blue mohawk, goat legs. You watch it today, it looks absolutely ridiculous. It's over the top, hilarious, actually. It's a horrible character design, but it is the voice, and it is what that voice is saying that really messed me up as a child. And watching Candyman, I totally see that being an issue for you as well.
See, I don't quite understand myself what it was. Like, obviously, there are factors. Tony Todd is intimidating. He does have a very imposing voice. There is that element of, you think of like other horror movies I would have watched around the time that didn't traumatize me, like, say, Friday the 13th. Maybe there's an element of, well, he doesn't teleport. You can kind of see him coming, whereas Candyman can just appear behind you. I never really could put my finger on it, but as a child, sometimes things just hit you. And like I said, there was other horror movies I watched did not have an impact on me.
Yeah. Well, Friday the 13th is a weird one to pick because it's just so fucking campy.
Well, it was the first example that came to my mind. Yeah.
With Candyman, it's an urban legend that's been twisted around to try and make, like original work for this film. But there are so many stories woven into the myth of Candyman that it just draws in fears from so many different elements of what would scare people. It's kind of like a bottleneck of fear, whether it's the story of the bees, which I've heard before, the hook hand, teleporting, abduction to different realms. There's a lot just kind of mashed together here. It's really like a melange or a cacophony of some of the best ideas out there, but it feels rooted in reality so deeply that it actually is a very effective story. Everything about Cabrini Green, the unacknowledged racial prejudice that's rampant throughout this film, it's very interesting. It's very real. It's very dark. It's very mean. This is a really mean film. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like, because it came out in 92, horror was pretty campy at the time. No one really took it seriously. I think this was kind of it wasn't a dud, but it could have been made more money. It could have been a lot better. It's a movie that should have been made today, not in 92. The sequels watered down how scary the story is. And I don't know the 2022 film, but I believe it is an actual sequel, not a remake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I definitely will watch that now after seeing this. But I'm very curious to get into this, just to kind of pick your brain about certain scenes to see what really stood out to you and what didn't. But of course, we have your game we have to play.
Yeah, and there's not much on this week.
Is it just the one?
No, it's actually two, but both of them are really small appearances in the other movies they appeared in.
Okay. Well, I was going to say Tony Todd from Holliston, but I guess channel surfing doesn't count.
Correct.
So it's going to have to say Tony Todd in Hatchet, which is
correct.
Also done by Adam Green. Other than that, I don't really know. I'm assuming it's not Xander Berkeley.
It's not a big role in this either.
Shit, I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's Ted Raimi.
Oh my god! Yeah, of course. And he has been in, I want to say, a few things we've covered.
Oh.
No?
You're hunting for hints, man.
I dropped the ball, didn't I?
Well, I don't know. Did you?
I don't know. How many movies has he been in that we've covered? I have no idea. Two? Yeah. Was he in Last Action Hero?
Nope.
I got nothing.
Okay. Army of Darkness.
That's right. I should have definitely guessed that. And what else?
Spider-Man.
I don't remember him in Spider-Man, so I'm not going to accept that defeat. But yeah, Army of Darkness for sure. I should have picked him out.
I looked it up and I was like, I don't remember him in Spider-Man. And it had even like a character name like Howard or something like that. And then you look at like the cast list for Spider-Man 2 and he's in it as Howard again. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, of course, Ted Raimi's going to be in every movie that his brother does.
I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like Bruce Campbell is. But yeah. So, okay, I lost that game. That's fine. Do you want to get into this?
Yeah, man.
Okay. I have to say, we open on a really beautiful overhead shot of Chicago, specifically a roadway. We get a lot of these shots. I find them not even establishing the scene so much as the feel of Chicago in 92.
I got to say something right now.
Is it about the music?
Music is on point.
The music makes this movie.
I'm not sure if it's similar to. Is it fair to compare it to like movies by John Carpenter? Maybe.
No. I think Philip Glass takes the cake with this. It is the most effective use of music in any movie we have ever covered.
Oh, I didn't mean in like similarity to the music. I meant for the impact and feel that it conveys when setting up a scene. Up until now, I don't think anybody's done it as well as what we've seen in John Carpenter films.
Okay. You might hear laughter in the background, but yes, I agree. The most effective music we've seen in films so far on this podcast, it has been done by John Carpenter.
But this is right up there because like the second this scene started, the music alone was getting me into a mindset that I think they would want any horror fan to get into, which is almost a little bit uneasy.
I was already unsettled.
Yeah.
We were looking at cars driving on a highway and I was uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously you combine that with the narration from Tony Todd, which not putting him on camera, but putting his voice on just conveys how powerful his voice is. And like, I don't normally like these intros where nothing happens, but his narration, this panning, the music, I was right into this intro.
Same. Perfect for this role. Giving us knowledge of the hook hand and how he'll split you from neck to groin. That's a gut punch. That's a great way to start a movie. You are already unsettled, and now let's actually get into the story because now you know what kind of events are going to unfold. We get our intro to Helen, played by Virginia Madsen. What do you think about Helen? What do you think about this casting?
I'm okay with it. I think she's actually quite good.
I think this is the best she's ever done.
Oh, I couldn't tell you what else she's done. Okay. She wasn't in one of our other movies, so that research didn't tell me anything, and I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I will say, going through the movie, not just from here, but moving forward, my memory of the movie was kind of limited to very certain things. I didn't remember how much of the movie was like almost like a crime investigation by her than a horror movie.
Through my notes, several times, I've written that this feels much more of a suspense thriller crime film than a horror film.
Absolutely. If later on we did discover that like the gang leader who was using the moniker of Candyman was actually the source of this movie, and they were just investigating these murders that this person was copycatting or whatever you would call it using the name.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised because that is the majority of the movie.
Yeah, this movie really reminds me of Seven.
Oh, that's a good movie.
It's a great movie.
One I've actually seen.
One of the few you've seen that I haven't forced you to watch.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
I know. It's really good though, right? But yeah. it really does have that feel. It's like it was done before Seven happened. And if you remove the supernatural elements from this movie, I would be along for the ride anyway, and I would have loved it. But we get the telling of the Candyman urban legend. A girl telling her boyfriend, who, yes, was played by Ted Raimi, the story about saying Candyman in the mirror 5 times. And right away, I have to say, you can't make Ted Raimi look cool. You just can't.
No, but he's the bad boy, dude.
Ted Raimi can never be the bad boy.
You know, he's drinking the beer and
wearing a leather jacket and jeans.
Yeah, she was going to put up for him because, you know, he was the bad boy, unlike her previous boyfriend.
So he says the name in the bathroom mirror 4 times, but he stops. And she makes him go downstairs and then says the name for the 5th time. Immediately murdered.
Which, upon first rewatching, perfect sense.
Yeah.
Second viewing, I'm like, huh, okay.
This movie does not hold up with a second viewing. And we'll get to that later. But
changes drastically because even in the first viewing, the whole time I'm like, this girl gets killed immediately. But Helen is like strung along for how long? It's like, why doesn't he just show up and kill her? We'll get into all that, but
yes, yeah, I have a note about that too. Cut to university professor asking about the story of sewer alligators. I kind of zoned out here just thinking about how much urban legend ripped this off with Robert Englund in this role.
No, I had a similar thought, but I thought I wish this was Robert Englund teaching about urban.
Yeah, it would have been great, but Xander Berkeley does a really good job. But I will never be able to look at him and not think about the stepdad stepdad in Terminator 2.
Yep, he was that person.
Exactly.
That just clicked in right now.
Gets the knife arm through the milk carton, through the mouth, out the back of the head.
Yeah, I'll always remember that.
So we talk of how urban legends change over time, and of course they do. We know this. Everybody knows this. Hasn't really been addressed until 1992 in horror films. So I get it. You have to have a little bit of hand holding. But modern oral folklore that are the fears of urban society, that's a ballsy statement to make. And I don't know how true that is. Yes, they do change over time. But where you are in Ontario, are there local myths, local urban legends?
I couldn't tell you one.
Exactly. Right?
Not local. Like, obviously, you know, you hear about the general ones that everybody does, but nothing local, nothing specific to us.
Yeah. Same here.
Like, we don't have our own version of, like, the Jersey Devil or anything like that.
I wish we had our own version of the Jersey Devil here. That'd be amazing. But this professor, again, Xander Berkeley, seems very happy to flirt with the students. His name's Trevor, and he's married to our protagonist, Helen. And she calls him out on flirting immediately. So we know this guy's trash.
I didn't buy anything this guy said at any point. Nothing.
The cleaner walks in on Helen writing her paper on Candyman and lets Helen know about her friend who supposedly has knowledge of the Spectre. So she gets the woman to come in, sit down, and tells Helen what she knows about the death of a woman named Ruthie Jean. What are your thoughts on this story? Because I found this story horrifying.
I know it's a movie. I know they have to move it along. But it just seems so convenient. Oh, this is what I'm doing my thesis on. Oh, the cleaning lady has experience with this. Okay, come on.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind, this is based off of a short story by Clive Barker, right? And we did Hellraiser, and convenience runs rampant throughout his stories. He needs convenience or his stories fall apart. He's all about specific scenes that will strike horror in people, but he doesn't really know how to link them together. So what he does is he relies on coincidence or convenience to move the story along. In Hellraiser, it makes sense because it's so fantastical, it's so ridiculous, over the top that you can ignore that. But a movie that seems so grounded in reality, you can't rely on convenience every time you need the movie to like push ahead to the next scene. And it really does show here. The writing is relatively weak when we're not talking dialogue, because I find the dialogue in this film very well done. So yes, this woman heard noises like somebody was bursting through the walls, and she called 911, and they didn't believe her. But when the police finally did show up, they found her dead, murdered with a hook or by a hook. As soon as Candyman is mentioned, the woman immediately says she knows nothing about that. Scene's over. Great way to build tension. Shuts everything down. So it's supposed to pique your interest, right?
So this is the cleaning lady
Yes.
that says she knows nothing about Candyman,
Yes.
except for the fact that Helen is asking the other cleaning lady about Candyman, and she's like, my friend knows about this.
You're not wrong. I didn't say the film was flawless. Helen going through the microfilm at the library. Again, the music taking the forefront of everything going on. I think this might be one of the most disturbing soundtracks of all time. Disturbing scores, I'll say. And I'm not sure, again, like this really makes me wonder, how much of a horror film are we watching? And how much of a crime film are we watching that just happens to have a few horror elements?
It has a very strong crime element for a very large portion of this movie.
Exactly. Now, do you think that detracts from the last third of the movie where the supernatural really takes hold? Because I'm already in. I'm already sold. This is the movie I'm watching, and I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying all of it. But then you promise me something for 2/3 of a film only to flip-flop and give me something completely different. Now that fucked me up, and I was pretty pissed off about it, but I expected it because we're talking Candyman here. Bees, hooks, ghosts, whatever. How did you feel about it?
So I don't think that switching it like that necessarily hurt the movie, but
Okay.
I think you could have made a stronger movie by sticking to the criminal element just because of how long you've committed to that buildup.
Would you prefer if they started off supernatural and just stayed the entire way, or are you okay with the crime elements?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
It's a question I really wanted to ask you, and then I realized I don't know if I could answer that either. So, okay, that night at Helen's condo, she reveals to her best friend and investigative partner, I guess, Bernadette, that her building, much like Cabrini Green, was originally a housing project that was later renovated and sold as condos. So she shows Bernadette the bathroom medicine cabinet, saying that in Cabrini Green, the killer broke through the medicine cabinet space. There's really not a lot of clarification here, and I found it really confusing until later on in the film, because we have no reason to believe that these buildings have the same layout whatsoever.
This seemed really flimsy.
It did, right? However, I also found it incredibly unsettling.
Well, the fact that somebody could just open the medicine cabinet and break into your apartment.
Yes, all you have to do is pull your medicine cabinet out of the wall and see the back of the one in the neighboring unit. All you have to do is push that in and you immediately have access to your next door neighbor's condo. Of course, that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, I think that they could have gone and investigated the Cabrini Green without this portion of where she's like, I can put this together because it's my medicine cabinet too. Like, they have enough reason to go there and investigate and interview people because of the other murders that they were told about, that they could have discovered the mirror thing while there, and it would have been more plausible.
Yeah, I think it's the mirror itself that really messed me up, because I've been in a situation in a motel in the States, in Maine, with my then girlfriend at the time, and we discovered that there was a two-way mirror in our room. So watching stuff like this, watching anything with mirrors being a little funky, really messes me up, and it's very effective for me. So for some reason, they decide to play the Candyman game, or the Bloody Mary game, I guess, in the bathroom. Bernadette stops it 4 times, but Helen says it 5, much like the story we were told at the beginning.
Okay, so why doesn't Candyman just appear immediately like he did in the beginning?
Because there's no fucking consistency to this goddamn myth about Candyman.
Okay, calm down.
And that is my major problem with this entire film.
Calm down.
Sorry, I will calm down. But see, like, they try and stick to reality while dealing with urban legends, folklore, and myth. But you can't stick to reality when you're dealing with stories that change every time someone relays it to another person. So what are we doing here?
The telephone game?
It is the telephone game, yes. So how... okay. You're right. I'm being too nitpicky. Okay, we'll go like this. I don't believe in shit like the Bloody Mary thing or Candyman, but at the same time, given the opportunity, I still wouldn't do it just because of the slight chance that I'm wrong, even though I don't believe in the supernatural.
That's one of the things that bothers me about this movie, is that why do so many people do this when, even if there's a chance that it's real or you believe that it's real, like the girl at the beginning of the movie with Bad Boy Ted, you think that's real. Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Just don't.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah, people being dumb.
Yes, exactly. But then they follow this up later that night when Helen's asleep in bed with a jump scare of her drunk husband. So we watch these two people do a really stupid move, and then they follow it up with the most ridiculous type of scare you can do. They may as well just have thrown a cat at her. But you get that music sting and drunk Trevor, who we already hate, and it's not scary, it's just annoying.
If you actually analyze it, not from a jump scare standpoint, he literally just runs in and jumps on her.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a stupid move.
None of that makes sense.
Oh, man, if I did that, I'm sleeping on the couch.
Exactly. With a black eye, probably.
Well, maybe two.
Yeah. So the next day, Helen and Bernadette go to Cabrini Green. They do a great job, honestly, at talking about how shitty and dangerous this place is, like gangs own every bit of the neighborhood, whatever. But do you feel like at this point we're getting too many helicopter shots?
No, didn't think about it.
I know. Well, with me, it's in any other movie, yes. But in this one, it works perfectly because it provides the best opportunity for more of Glass's haunting music, which, again, takes the forefront of this movie multiple times. And I can forgive the horrible scenes we've just watched because the music is so insanely effective that I'm right back to being unsettled. So I don't know. I don't know how many times this movie went through the editing process, but it seems like they realized that they needed to put in more music to make up for some of the really terrible scares and scenes we get. But investigating the grounds of Cabrini Green, what's your immediate take on this, if you don't mind my asking?
No, I didn't like it.
What, like, you didn't like it, or you were nervous, or what?
In general, I didn't like it just because I knew I was watching Candyman, and like this further moves it into crime and racial and just
stereotypes.
It feels like we're just moving further and further away from an actual horror movie.
Yeah. The gang hanging around outside. The women draw immediate attention. Of course, we're supposed to feel uncomfortable because they do. But everyone assumes they're police. They document graffiti, sweets to the suite, which I love how sweet keeps popping up throughout the movie. And they go to Ruthie Jean's apartment and discover it's the exact same layout as Helen's, which she already assumed for no good reason. But yes, that is the case. And they examine the medicine cabinet. Of course, it's the same fucking scenario. But Helen crawls through. And my next note just says, nope, all of the nope. She's crazy, right?
Even if Candyman is not real in their universe, there is a confirmed murder that came from that apartment.
Yep.
I'm not going in, especially if my only reassurance or feeling of reassurance is calling into the apartment and not hearing any sound. Because, you know, a murderer hiding in there would probably be like, yeah, I'm here.
And that's just it. Her theory is that that's how the killer or killers got into Ruthie Jean's apartment, was through that hole. So if that's how they got in, why would you crawl through and see what's on the other side yourself, knowing that these killers have not been apprehended?
Exactly.
Who knows what's through the other side?
As a whole load of stupid.
And what is on the other side? Like, she crawls through yet another hole. That the giant face mural that she crawls through the mouth. is terrifying.
It is, but why is it there?
I don't know. And I also want to ask, why is that pile of candy there?
At this point, I feel like I would almost prefer that going through the mirror took her into another dimension.
Thank you for bringing that up. Because that comes up repeatedly at the end of the film with Candyman. What are we dealing with? Does he have his own realm? Does he have a candy lair?
I mean, you're asking questions to which there are no answers.
But it seems like there must be. And for something that they try and root in reality or base in reality, this doesn't make any sense. So what are we going for now?
It's magic.
It's magic, exactly. Magic has no place in this film.
That's all I got.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a viable answer. It's just sad that that's the case, because this could be a great movie that is face planting on story elements it's trying to build and then go back on with no reason and then abandon, but then we'll bring up later on after they've already shut it down. Like it's muddled. It's a muddled mess.
It gets worse.
It gets so much worse. So the neighbor, Anne-Marie, calls them out for snooping, but agrees to be interviewed. I have to say, so far, she seems like the most likable person in the film.
Yeah.
Down to earth, honest, open, willing to question, which a lot of people aren't, but also willing to listen and understand, which also a lot of people aren't. She introduces her baby boy, Anthony. Completely forgot about this future plot point. But it's revealed that the people of Cabrini Green actually do believe in the idea of Candyman.
And they have reason to.
Yes, they do. Cut to dinner that night. Helen, Trevor, and Bernadette are having dinner with some guy who's an expert on the history of Candyman.
Who is this guy?
I don't know. They don't even name him in the movie. I'm sure he has a name in the credits, but...
And he's just a jerk.
He is a jerk. Do you want to... I don't know if you have any notes on this or you remember, but do you want to give us a background of the character? The mythos of Candyman?
No.
Okay, well, I can. He was the legend began in 1890. He was the son of a slave. His father later designed a contraption to mass produce shoes, which was very prosperous and allowed Candyman, or I forget his name, something Robitaille. I feel real bad now. Daniel Robitaille. Yes, that was it. He grew up rich, a great artist, was hired to paint the portrait of a rich man's daughter. They ended up in a heated affair, and she got pregnant, and this did not go over well. So the father hired basically a mob of people, which chased the man to Cabrini Green, where they sawed off his right hand, stole honeycomb from a nearby apiary, and smeared him with it, causing him to be stung to death by the angry bees. The body was burned, and the ashes scattered over the grounds.
Not the bees.
Not the bees, right? It's a fucked up death, but
yeah.
I remember it being a lot worse for some reason. I also missed the point. I went back and tried to rewatch in case. I don't understand where the hook came into play. Did they cover that, or is that something they cover in the next movie? I don't remember.
Honestly, didn't even think about that until you just asked me.
Yeah, right? Because it's nailed in. You can see when they do close-ups of the hook, there are nails angled in to hold it into his stump.
Yeah, and it's not like they cut off his hand and he got a hook to replace it and then later died. They killed him like right after they cut off his hand. So
exactly. So that's a bit of the legend they kind of left out. Helen returns to the housing project and meets young Jake, who is also an amazing character. I love this kid.
Good actor.
Great actor. Great child actor. Dewan Guy. Or Guy. I think Dewan Guy is his name. But right off the bat, when he's basically... She asks if he's afraid of Candyman. He says, I ain't scared of nobody. And you're like, this kid's great.
Except that he is.
Yeah. He's absolutely terrified.
Even like later when she wants him to be a witness and he's at the precinct.
Oh my
and
God.
He's like, I don't want to testify. And it's like, you're clearly afraid, dude.
You're terrified.
But he's putting on a strong front. It makes this character so likable.
This kid is hard, though, man. When he tells the story, his story is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard. About the boy being castrated by Candyman in a public washroom. Even I was taken aback by it. Like, this movie does go in very, very dark places.
Yeah, but like so many of them are unnecessary.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. Do tell.
Well, like, we can obviously have a backstory for Candyman and establish the threat that he poses, but it's just like they weren't content with that. So they're like, we're just going to give you like 4 reasons to be afraid of this guy and keep giving you different motivations. It's like, you don't need that.
No, you don't. I have written here that I'm starting to wonder if it was the music that actually scared you and not Candyman himself.
The music is very effective, but
terrifying.
Keep in mind, we also haven't really seen a lot of Tony Todd as Candyman yet.
We haven't gotten a full reveal yet.
He is definitely a part of it.
Okay. What about when they go outside in the courtyard of Cabrini Green and she asks Jake, is somebody building a bonfire? And he responds, yeah, for the party. Give me more of that story right now. Because that's old furniture that's stacked probably 20 feet high. I'm like, tell me about this party.
There's a part of this bonfire storyline that bothers me so much.
Do you want to get into that now or later?
I might as well say it now. We can dive into it more later. But
sure.
Who prepares for a bonfire a month in advance?
Yeah, you don't know if it's going to rain. Although, still, like, it's just a mishmash of everything that they're going to throw gasoline on and light a blaze anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But also, what is this party? They never get into it. We assume it has something to do with the anniversary of Candyman's death or the anniversary of certain deaths from the projects. If we were told, I completely missed it. Did you catch something I missed out on?
I don't know concretely, but it almost felt like the fire was almost like symbolic to burn away the bad luck or ward off. And it would have made a little bit more sense to me if they were a little bit clearer on it, because there's definitely an element of this movie where Candyman is almost like that false god where he needs people to believe in him to have his power. And if they weren't building the bonfire, for example, and that's why he's kind of doing what he's doing and trying to essentially recruit Helen to be his, sacrifice with him, that he's now becoming active again to reinstill that fear because they're not building the bonfire this time around.
Yeah.
But
I get that too. But if I'm going to like burn an effigy or have like some ceremonial fire to ward off an evil spirit, I'm not going to set fire to my busted up fucking couch. Like, none of this, it doesn't seem important enough. Symbolism, sure, but at the same time, symbolism be damned. Because you're trying to put importance on something without explaining why it's important.
Fair. And it wouldn't probably take too much to just kind of try and explain that these people are in the projects. They don't have a lot. So if that is, for example, someone's couch, and they're sacrificing a comfort of modern living to appease this quote unquote God, then that seems like a bit more of a sacrifice and has a bit more purpose.
Exactly.
But right now it's just a pile of old wood.
And even that is kind of reaching. But I do agree with what you're saying. Yeah, we're coming at it from the same direction. So Helen investigates the bathroom, which, first of all, don't fucking do that. Why? Why would you do that?
This is another one of those things where I'm like, why are you so dumb? Like, again, you're investigating Candyman, and you may or may not believe it to be true. Perhaps that's why she had no issue saying Candyman the 5th time, is because she doesn't actually believe it. But you hear a story about a guy being castrated in the bathroom in front of a building where there's a confirmed murder, something is definitely going on.
And not just a guy, a little kid.
Like, don't go in there alone, at least. Like, if you're going to go in there, get backup.
Yeah. Question.
Mm-hmm.
Was that last toilet filled with bees?
Yes.
Okay, good. So she's attacked by 4 men, one with a hook who claims to be Candyman, and they just knock her out.
See, and this is where that mythos could work as a crime movie, because it's somebody utilizing the mythos of an urban legend to pretty much use as their cover for gang activity and murders and crimes and things like that.
Yes.
Cool.
See, this is why I love talking with you about movies like this, because we have a lot of fun just talking about campy, ridiculous bullshit films. But a movie that seems to be competent or could be extremely competent, and then they just kind of step on their own toes, you're really good at picking up on what could have made it better. And that is a perfect example of where they messed up here, and they could have turned it around and made a much better film. It would have been much more effective. I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And I think when the credits finally roll in this movie, I might have actually appreciated it a hell of a lot more than I did.
I think it's very possible. Like, I think that the stronger movie is the crime movie.
Yes. But Helen identifies the man in a police lineup, and her eyes real fucked up. The makeup did a great job, but it is a little over the top.
I think it's on purpose because her eye is so swollen. It almost looks like the most messed up bee sting you'd ever have.
Oh, good call. I missed that altogether. So the police pin the Candyman murders on this guy. And poor Jake, like you mentioned before, he thinks Candyman's going to kill him for spilling the beans. I would have liked more Jake in this movie, but I feel like when he is on screen, they use him well. Why do you think we get that shot of Helen and Trevor's romantic dinner that night?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't want to see any of this.
No, it feels like she's so excited as to where her journalism is going, finding the guy that assaulted her, and Trevor still shows up late or drunk, like when he belly flopped on the bed. I think it's just setting up what we already know, what they fucking told us from the beginning of the movie, that he's most likely sleeping with one of his students.
Now, this is another question that I have. Why? Why do I care about this?
We don't. We're not supposed to.
It has no ultimate impact on anything that happens with Helen or Candyman. That story could have played out the exact same way that it did without him even being in it.
Right? And they follow it up with a scene that bugs me even more than this.
Okay.
When Helen and Bernadette meet up on campus, I have to bring this up because the ADR is fucking horrible. Like, you can tell that Casey Lemons, who plays Bernadette, is in a completely different room recording these lines because, Sandro, nobody's whisper should echo out in the open.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works scientifically. Yeah.
It was so bad. It really kicked me out of the film. And from that point, it's hard to get back into it. Like, up until this point, this movie is, I would say, borderline extremely well made. And then we get that horrible scene followed up with atrocious ADR. But Bernadette gives Helen the photos that they took at Cabrini Green, and they part ways. Helen anxiously looks at them on the way to her car, and we get, Sandro, 44 minutes in, we get a Candyman sighting. And that voice is probably one of the most haunting things I will ever hear in my life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the full body reveal? What do you think about the look of Candyman?
I think it's well done in a way to mask what you truly get at first surface imagery.
Okay. I love every second of it, but I'm not saying it's perfect. Helen hallucinates almost in a trance-like state, and I'm not going to repeat the line, but Todd's deliverance is phenomenal. Everything he says in this movie is said with purpose and done perfectly. And I think that is incredibly unnerving. He is, I would say, probably, we have awards and everything, but I'd say it's probably the best performance, maybe not my favorite, but it's flawless in this movie.
You're referring to when he says, "Be my victim"?
Yes.
Uh,
There's multiple lines. Every line he says in this movie is just fantastic.
After first viewing, that line makes very little sense to me.
Go on.
Well, I feel like the entire purpose of Helen to Candyman, and the reason that she's not murdered immediately, is because she's so much more to him than a victim.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up. I have to ask you, what is Helen to Daniel Robitaille?
Well, I mean, we do find out later in the movie that she has a very striking resemblance to the other woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name, or if they did name.
I don't think they said the name, but I also don't think they actually straight up imply that. I think that's left on the viewer to interpret. Well,
because the mural that we saw, it looks like her, right?
But I kind of thought that was her.
Oh, see, my interpretation of it was that the woman he fell in love with, again, do not remember her name, in the past, looked like Helen, or the other way around. And that's why he is more interested in almost like in this messed up way, like if he takes her down with him, she will join him for eternity, and he's trying to find like a surrogate for this woman that he lost.
Do you know what's crazy about that? It reminds me a lot of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, you can see that element there. Absolutely.
Which came out the exact same year.
I mean, that's the impression I got from it. I didn't know if you did, but...
I didn't. But I like that interpretation a lot. But in a movie that wants to give you all the facts and then realizes that it doesn't have any facts to give you, I feel like that actually was Helen in the mural. So I like your take on this a lot. It never crossed my mind. So it is giving me a lot more to think about.
I'm just pulling at strings that really just start with the fact that he doesn't kill her right away.
But that's the thing. Should we be pulling at strings?
No, but that is where we are, and we can't change that.
Exactly. A lot of people give this movie a lot of weight. That it's one of the best horror films ever made. I think you and I are kind of heading in the same direction on where we think about this, but let's continue with the plot for now.
Okay.
Helen blacks out and wakes up in Anne-Marie's apartment, or the bathroom of the apartment, covered in blood, and we hear Anne-Marie screaming in horror. Thoughts on this reveal?
Why did she black out?
She does a lot. It's almost like he controls her consciousness.
Okay, cool. Then you know what? Pivot entirely and make it that when she blacks out, she's committing the Candyman crimes.
Exactly.
It is just in her mind, and when she blacks out, she is Candyman.
Thank you. That's exactly what this movie needed to be, and it wasn't.
Then the final scene with her appearing in the mirror makes more sense, because now we're not seeing it through her blacked out eyes. We're seeing it from someone else's eyes, and they can identify her as the killer.
And that makes the footage from the psychiatric hospital make so much more sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because it's in her head.
Yeah. So, okay, this was pretty much the most shocking part of the movie for me. Was her opening the bathroom door, revealing the decapitated dog head, and then the bloody crib, which, like, I kind of had to bend over with, like, pain in my guts. It's, like, heart-wrenching. This ends horribly for Helen, because Anne-Marie attacks her, and then Helen stabs her in the arm, and as the police arrive, it looks like Helen killed everyone and is about to kill Anne-Marie. It's insanity. And then is topped off by the most traumatizing strip search that's been represented, I think, on film, while Helen is covered in blood. She's having a breakdown. She is having a full-on breakdown, and nobody cares. She's pleading to talk to people and just being ignored. You have to admit that this is a hard watch.
Yeah, and it's also completely unnecessary.
Completely. It's just trying to make us feel for Helen when there's really no need.
But at the same time, why does Candyman need to frame her for this to get what he wants?
I feel like I know this is wrong, but I feel like they took Clive Barker's story and a crime script and just mashed them together and like, we need to make this work. So Helen's arrested because of course she is. And she calls Trevor, but he's not home at 3 a.m. So I'm sure everything's fine there.
See, and I think this is another one of those threads that I've been pulling, is that I feel like what I said earlier about Candyman needing to kind of reassert his presence is the reason that he's framing her and putting her in these situations. But like, even that, it's like flimsy. It's so flimsy.
Yeah. He does bring that up too, that she's ruined the community's belief in him and that he has no power from that now. But Trevor eventually does show up and bails her out. And I don't know how much that cost, but it must have been an insane amount of money. Honestly, on this watch, like the first watch, I didn't realize that the baby's body wasn't found until the scene with the lawyer. Now, like, honestly, I'm like, guys, at this point, definitely please do not kill a baby in this movie.
I remember that they didn't. It was one of the few things that stood out from watching this as a kid. Was just the scene of the baby in the crib with Candyman. So I was like, okay, well, I know the baby's not dead.
I didn't remember that, but I'm so glad that it came up because I honestly thought that they killed Anthony, and I was really angry about that. But since when does Candyman kidnap people?
Since when does Candyman care for a child for 30 days?
Yeah. I don't know. We were led to believe that he was a nice person. Like a genuinely nice person in life.
Cool. Babies need to eat. Like,
who told you babies need food to live?
Did he feed and change the diapers of Anthony? Because
steady diet of bees. You don't need to eat when you're in Candyman's fire pile.
Yeah, okay. And is that where his lair is?
This movie just gets so bad as it goes on, man. Like, it starts off so strong and it fails miserably. So Helen in the bath questions Trevor on his whereabouts. He said he was in bed fast asleep. My next note just says, fuck you, Trevor. Leaving Helen alone might be a horrible idea, but he does anyway. So she goes through the photos and rests on one. A photo she took of herself in a mirror reveals Candyman behind her. Again, I love it, but this is starting to feel more like Seven than a horror film. And then we get that fucking jump scare that honestly made me push back in the chair I was in. That hook coming through the mirror was amazing. But the music sting was what did it, not the visual. So, half points. We get the hallway scare, kitchen scare. How did you feel about all this?
I feel like we're getting to the point where the sound design is the MVP of this movie.
Sound design is obviously the MVP of this movie. Candyman wants to show her baby Anthony or she will die in his place. And apparently her attempt to disprove Candyman's existence destroyed the people's belief that he exists. Now he has to prove himself again. Basic, yeah, but it works, I guess. I'm starting to check out now, man. Bernadette arrives and is promptly murdered. We see nothing at first, but the sound effects are pretty disgusting, so points for that. And Trevor walks in, sees an unconscious and bloody Helen on the floor holding a kitchen knife, making it look like she killed her best friend, and of course he calls the cops, and she's arrested.
Just make it so that she did kill her best friend.
Exactly!
It just really would have been so much better if they went with the whole thing that she was actually Candyman all along.
Yeah. And I think they know that they fucked up with this writing, because whenever they put out a scene like this, and I start getting disappointed or frustrated, they throw in a Candyman voiceover, which every single one is just, it's simply wonderful. I love this man's voice. But what space is baby Anthony being kept? Is it? We have no reason to believe it's inside the bonfire pile, because that doesn't make any sense anyway.
Honestly, this is one of the things that confused me maybe the most. I have no idea where this baby is.
I have no idea where the baby is either, and they never tell us, but they play it like we're supposed to know. So are we idiots or is it bad storytelling?
Oh, it's definitely bad storytelling.
Right? It's horrible storytelling. Or we're just afraid to admit that we didn't understand what was happening on screen.
And you know what? I'm not saying that we're geniuses or anything like that.
I'm a genius.
Okay, fine. But if both of us can't figure it out after multiple viewings, I don't think it's us.
Yeah, we're having a bad time, fellas. How does she constantly fend him off? Like when she finds herself bound to a bed in a psychiatric hospital and is tormented by Candyman, Helen just basically wards him off with words.
Well, and that's the thing. He doesn't want to kill her.
Yeah.
At least not yet. He needs to make a spectacle of it. He needs to make it prominent. I don't know.
Yeah. Helen then meets Dr. Burke, and honestly, Dr. Burke immediately, he seems like a right prick. But we find out she's been there for a month. I'm not a big fan of unexpected time jumps in movies, but it's okay here, I guess, because now I just kind of want it to be over.
No, because as soon as he said that, I'm like, how is the baby still there?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we're at a point now where you and I cannot nitpick this movie because it falls apart. But then, like I said, showing her the surveillance footage from the last time she saw Candyman immediately makes her look insane. And again, let's root this in reality. Let's ground it in reality because that's the movie we need to see here, not this supernatural bullshit mumbo jumbo. Mambo jumbo. Of course she insists she isn't insane and proves it to Dr. Burke by summoning Candyman, which is the funniest fucking scene in this movie. And I'm completely checked out now. It's a shocking death, but a hilarious execution. Because Tony Todd is going full on in this. Full on. It looks hilarious. It's not serious whatsoever. It ruins any sense of dread. And then he just fucking flies out the window.
This looked bad.
It did look bad. It looked really bad. But then it just allows for a horrible scene to happen next where Helen escapes. How? Out the fucking window. And then in another, knocks out a nurse, but looks like she kills her, steals her uniform and keys, and just walks out the front door. Sandra, we're back at the condo now.
It's so bad.
She finds the place being painted by one of Trevor's students, obviously dating him now. First off, gross. Second off, this poor kid is fucking terrified. With total reason. She's in a relationship with her professor, and now she's being confronted by his murderous wife who's just escaped an insane asylum. I don't know about you, but I would probably like kind of back into a corner and just act uncomfortable. Maybe cry a bit. Who knows?
I mean, at this point, it's kind of on you.
Yeah, of course.
It's not like the Helen stuff isn't in the news. And, well, if you're shacking up with her husband, you kind of have to anticipate the possibility of that happening.
Helen on the bridge, where we get the Candyman quote, "They will all abandon you. All that you have left is my desire for you." Fucking woof. That's a heart punch. And she finds Candyman's magic candy layer, complete with murals showing his brutal death, which also makes no sense to me. And Candyman's just having a fucking nap on the floor like all terrifying fucking serial killer ghosts do.
Well, that if the mural depicts his demise, then he must have done the mural after he became Candyman?
I don't know. Is he busy spending time, like years, decades, a century maybe, more, yeah, painting how his life went down?
Can you imagine, like, walking into that room and Candyman is there just painting a mural?
No, I can't. But also, if I'm supposed to be terrified of this fucking crazy murderous specter and I walk in and he's just passed out cold on the floor, we have a problem here, man. That is not fear-inducing. That is not intimidating. That is just a guy passed out on the floor.
You know what I seldom think of about, supernatural killers?
What's
their
that?
necessity to sleep.
That's true. You never really think about supernatural killers having that nap.
Like, do you ever imagine you'll walk in on Jason and he's just sleeping?
Yeah. Helen attacks him and he basically tries to seduce her, pointing out the bargain that she trades her life for the baby's. And the dialogue here is phenomenal, but we get the bee rib cage and the bees coming out of his mouth, which were real bees, followed by the kiss that knocks her out. But she wakes up. I guess it was a dream. I don't know anymore because this happens a few times now and it's different every time. And she sees a mural of her and Candyman, or maybe the woman that Candyman fell in love with years ago. We don't know because no one's telling us a fucking thing. She hears Anthony's cries from inside the woodpile that was set for the bonfire, and Jake awakens and mistakes her for Candyman. Meanwhile, the residents are dousing the woodpile with gasoline, which is pretty intense, but how does nobody else hear the baby crying? That's a big problem for me.
It's drowned out by their gleeful laughs of the pyro that they're about to experience. I don't know.
Right. The whole thing's set ablaze while Candyman holds Helen inside. Realizing that he had no intention of letting the baby go, Helen stabs Candyman with a piece of flaming wood and escapes with Anthony. At least the residents freak out and try to save the burning woman, but she does die. But Anne-Marie is reunited with her son. And Candyman just kind of explodes, but doesn't. Bees go everywhere, but his corpse is still there, which Jake sees burnt.
I feel like he could have gotten out of there if he wanted to.
Yes, he could have gotten out of there if he wanted to. He fucking teleports.
Yeah, so I got nothing here, man.
So we cut to Helen's funeral, where there's almost nobody there, but all the residents of Cabrini Green arrive to pay their respects, and Jake presents Candyman's hook and throws it into the grave with Helen's casket. Now, I have a major problem with this. There is no way, if the soul is real, or spirits are real, that it's going to rest properly if it's buried with the hook that killed the host of the spirit. It's more like, forever remember your torment. Fuck you, thanks for helping. This might be the dumbest ending ever.
He's arming her is what's happening.
Oh, is that supposed to be a pun?
No, like,
okay.
He's creating the new Candyman by giving her the weapon.
Okay, it's terrible.
I didn't say it was good.
I know. So Trevor sits alone in the bathroom, grieving and ignoring his girlfriend. He says Helen's name in the mirror 5 times for reasons not explained.
Well, see, now this is a little bit more understandable than when people said it before, because there's no urban legend about Helen, and he is just kind of mourning and kind of saying it to himself.
Yeah.
This is more believable of a reason for him to say it than the people that say Candyman, because those people are just trying to tempt fate, where he's just happens to be in the bathroom, which you have to presume he's in the bathroom because he's hiding it from his
girlfriend
student.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. I see what you're trying to say here, and I kind of get it, but I don't accept it.
And Stacy in the kitchen is so upset with him. It's like,
believable though, right?
I mean, again, at the same time, it's like, you knew what you were getting into. The guy was married. It's not like he's going to not care that she dies.
Yeah. But yeah, he says the name 5 times in the mirror, and her spirit appears behind him, and she murders him with the hook. The only thing I really enjoy about this is the soft, haunting piano that plays. And the credits roll as we slowly zoom in on a portrait of Helen painted in Candyman's lair, or the woman that he was in love with before. We have differing opinions here. And that's the end of the movie.
I wish that when Helen appeared behind Trevor, she was with Candyman.
That'd be great.
Like they were a new team, a new couple now. And
it felt like that's what they were leading to.
Well, that almost seemed like that was what Candyman's intention was from like a very early part of the movie.
Exactly.
Like, okay, he didn't manage to kill her like he planned, but she died anyway, so he still got what he wanted.
Exactly. That would be great. But instead we get horrible makeup effects on her. And it was really rough ending. I hated it. Let's get into some numbers here, man. I'm really curious to know what you think about this.
Okie dokie.
What do you think the budget was?
15 million.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 8 and 9.
Okay, so I overshot that.
Gross?
You know what? I'm going 15 again.
25.8.
Okay, not bad.
Not bad. Moderate success, but nothing crazy. Over at IMDb, I know it's pretty dodgy with these, but out of 10, what do you think viewers are giving it?
5.1.
6.7, surprisingly.
Oh, okay.
But the critics on Rotten Tomatoes were a little bit better, and I find that shocking too. But on a tomato meter, percentage of positive reviews.
73.
79, good call.
Okay.
Audience score.
54.
63.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it didn't do great, but I wasn't terribly far off.
Yeah, when you're looking at these numbers, you're like, is this a cult classic? I'm not sure. But jumping into awards.
Okay. Who did you have for your least favorite character?
Trevor, played by Xander Berkeley. But he was supposed to be, I think. He just did it really well, but at the same time, he irritated me every time he was on screen.
Yeah.
Until the end.
I can't disagree with you. Like, I picked him as well. And yes, I understand this is supposed to be a character you hate. It does kind of bug me to pick him because there's no reason to have this character in the movie.
Yeah, there's not. There's not, you're right.
Him being this deplorable character, like, again, you want to like dive further into the whole thing about Candyman wanting to somehow recruit, for lack of a better word, Helen, then maybe you could play up this emotional part where he can only really take over her mind if it's in a weakened state, so he needs to ruin things around her. And that would put a little bit more credence into the statement of they will all abandon you and all you'll have left is my desire for you. But it just feels like so many other elements of this movie, they don't go all the way with it, and it suffers. That being said, you can't deny that Trevor is a scumbag.
He really is. Favorite character?
Tony Todd is Candyman.
Same.
I mean,
there's nothing to say there.
There's a reason that this guy is so terrifying, and it is because of, I just want to emphasize this one word, his presence.
Yep.
It cannot be matched.
No, it can't. There's a reason why he stands out in film history as a horror icon. Like, he's not really in this movie that much, but when he is, he commands your attention 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree. I agree with you. It's Candyman, played by Tony Todd.
Okay, so what did you have for your favorite or most memorable line?
It's almost impossible for this movie. Basically anything Candyman says. So I had to just pretend that he had no lines. And it was the scene between Helen and Dr. Burke where she's like calling him out about how like she's going to prove everything and prove him wrong. And he's like, I work for your defense. And the whole thing is like, you get the idea that they need to keep her in the institution because she's absolutely insane. And he's like, no, I'm on your side. I'm trying to help your lawyers build their case. I'm not the enemy here. But he plays that smarmy, disgusting, I'm going to keep you in here even though you don't think you need to be in here role so well. Like Stanley DeSantis as Dr. Burke, we see him in one scene and he kills it. So yeah, it's a line like that where it's kind of like a really tongue-in-cheek, but like gut punch at the same time. It's a good one. You?
So I did go with a Tony Todd line. And actually it didn't stand out to me until I did my second viewing. And it is because of the impact it has on my view of the movie as a whole and where a lot of these threads that I was sharing with you came from.
Okay.
During his very first monologue, that narration that we get over the credits scene, there's one line that he finishes it with that almost makes it feel like this narration, he's talking to Helen.
Yeah.
And the final line says, I came for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when you think about everything that's happened, all of our discussion about how she said his name 5 times and he didn't show up.
Yeah.
it lends credence to all of that, is that he found a woman that looked like the love that he lost, and this was premeditated no matter what she did. Because
True.
in the entirety of the movie, you know this mythos as you have to summon Candyman by saying his name 5 times. So at the very beginning of the movie, they have that character say to the audience, which I firmly believe is to Helen, "I came for you," implying that he had this free will to go where he wanted without being summoned. It really, really changes the outlook of the entire movie if you focus on that line right at the beginning.
Yes. That also leads to what could be a very long conversation between us.
Fair, but I mean, that's why it stood out to me, is because I watched this movie the first time, and I had an idea of what I was to expect. I completely forgot about all the crime stuff.
Yeah.
And then going into the second viewing with the knowledge that I had of the movie fresh in my mind with the plot and everything, it was almost like the eureka moment of the movie happened to me 45 seconds into the second viewing.
Makes sense. Definitely provide a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
What was your most memorable scene?
So it's Trevor summoning Helen at the end of the movie. And the main reason why is because when I think of my childhood trauma and all of the fear that I had of this movie, it wasn't of Candyman. It was of Helen at the end of the movie. When I thought about Candyman, when I spent a couple days sitting with the idea that I was going to have to watch this movie, and a lot of those memories and fears came back, it was always of Helen, not of Candyman.
All right.
And I don't know why.
Me neither. Doesn't make sense. It seems to be like the goofiest part of the movie.
I know, but I can't not pick the scene that stuck with me for years.
No, I'm not criticizing you for that choice. It's just I found that very interesting.
I'm fairly confident that if I saw this movie as an adult, it would have no impact on me whatsoever.
I think so as well.
And you?
The reveal of the medicine cabinets having no separation.
You know what? I should have guessed that. Yeah.
That's absolutely terrifying to me. I don't like that one bit at all. It actually really upset me.
I feel like if I lived in a place with medicine cabinets like that and I was aware of them, I would do something to secure them, like, immediately.
Exactly.
That's it? That's all you want to say about that?
Yep. Nope. It weirded the shit out of me, and I still feel uncomfortable with that idea, and I really don't want to talk about it anymore.
All right. So why don't we get into our final thoughts and or recommendations of this movie? You usually lead us off, so why change that now?
I'm going to make this one pointed. I'll make it brief, though. Starts off absolutely amazing. A lot of tension. It builds the potential scares very, very well. Makes you care about the characters, makes you care about the story, and then about 2/3 of the way in, shits the bed, and you just stop caring. So it ends so poorly that I don't want to recommend it, because the first part is so good that when the movie's over, you're just disappointed at what could have been. There are some good scares. The music is what makes it. By far, Philip Glass is the best part of this movie. But he's an iconic character. Tony Todd does a great job, and this Virginia Madsen does a great job. Even Xander Berkeley is phenomenal, but at the same time, it's not good. So I don't recommend watching it. I recommend reading the synopsis on Wikipedia so you know what people are talking about when they talk about Candyman. But watch a couple clips on YouTube, and I think you're good. What do you think, Sandro?
Well, I don't recommend this movie. I ignoring my childhood thoughts and impressions of this movie, it's not a good movie.
No.
I'm actually kind of unsure how it kind of garnered cult status, because like you said, it starts off very strong as what could be a phenomenal crime movie. And then it just becomes something that is riddled with plot holes and inconsistencies. And I really don't know what they're going for with this movie.
It's directionless.
You mentioned it when we were going through the plot, but like Candyman doesn't even show up for like 45 minutes. And normally that can be that can be done very well to build suspense and anticipation and a little bit of, fear.
Like Jaws.
But in this movie, it's just like, now you're just kind of in the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, the crime movie that this movie begins as is the much more powerful movie. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that what we got was bad, but it wasn't nearly like reaching the potential that they had, because it feels like with so many of the plot inconsistencies that it has, it's like you had a great idea, you got halfway there, and then just bailed on it.
The way the film ended was not what the beginning of the movie promised, and it suffered from it.
I mean, tell me, what did Candyman really do in this movie?
Nothing.
He killed a dog, he killed a friend, and he babysat for 30 days.
Yeah, exactly.
I chose to say babysat for 30 days because it emphasizes the disappointment of what this character does. If you take out that initial scene with Bad Boy Ted, right? Like, he kills one person. Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot about the doctor. He kills two people, the psychologist or whatever.
Dr. Burke.
Yeah. Yes. That's it.
That's it.
He's barely on screen. Honestly, this movie would have been so much stronger if you either did the crime or went with the fact that Helen from the start was the Candyman, or at least controlled by him, so that she was the one committing these murders. You would have such a stronger story.
Giving us the title of this film and then providing the movie accompanying it, it would only make sense if you put a question mark at the end of the title.
Candyman?
Candyman? You'd be like, yeah, what is Candyman? Like, I don't really know. Is he a ghost? I think so.
I don't know what he is, but I know that the Candyman can.
Yeah. Candyman can.
That is what I was referring to, yes.
Oh, God. All right.
I will close off with this, though. Watching the movie, I'm like, why was I afraid of this movie?
Thank you. That's what I've been waiting for this entire time.
I was so afraid to watch this movie. And when it came to the second viewing, I hit play with no hesitation.
Exactly. I'm so glad. This is exactly what I wanted to come out of this episode. There is no reason for this movie to scare you. It is awful. Awful. It is dumb. Tony Todd does a great job, but the story ruins the character. So when you're old enough to follow the story, this is not scary.
I should have watched this movie so long ago, but as an adult. Like, when I turned 20, maybe even I should have just watched it and then put this behind me, because there was no reason at all.
No.
Although I will say, and for no reason but just to say it, like, Tony Todd is so great.
He's great. He's amazing.
Just want to throw that in there.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy you conquered one of your childhood fears watching this. I felt really bad at first, then kind of giddy, then bad again that I recommended or that I picked this. But I knew that when you watched it again, you would see that while the character can be disturbing, there's no reason to be as off-put by the movie as you were.
Well, keep in mind, childhood trauma is a very powerful thing that you and I are not equipped to take care of.
Yes, I know this.
This could have gone either way.
It could have, but I'm glad it went the way it did.
All right, so that was our thoughts on Candyman. If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can hit us up on social media. We're on Twitter at BSBargainBin, BSBargainBin.com, Facebook.com/BSBargainBin, and YouTube.com/@BSBargainBin. Ben.
Yo.
What are we watching next week, bud?
Next week is March's listener pick coming from Cody. We will be talking about a film I can't believe we haven't covered yet. we'll be talking 1979's Alien.
Until next week, have a good one.
All the best.